Well, welcome back if you're joining us for this next session, and thank you for joining us today. This is our second session of the day, and this session is called Visitors Count. These are new guidelines that aim to help national stakeholders, protected area managers, and researchers count visitation and measure economic impacts consistently through a standardized approach, something that we've all been yearning for several years now. In this session, several of the guidelines contributing experts will explain how they use this approach and how to help managers make informed decisions on management plans and tourism strategies. This methodological approach, or these approaches, were developed and tested in different protected areas around the world, including national parks, UNESCO World Heritage properties, and UNESCO Biosphere reserves. Up first, we'll hear from Dr. Jyoti Hosagrahar, the Deputy Director of the World Heritage Center at UNESCO. While she couldn't be here today, she pre-recorded a video, which I will now share.
I'm Jyoti Hosagrahar. I'm the Deputy Director of the World Heritage Center at UNESCO in Paris. It is my great pleasure to be with you today to greet you for this symposium on crisis response and recovery, nature-based tourism, biodiversity, and livelihoods. Unfortunately, I'm not able to join you online today, but it is my pleasure to open this session on visitors count, establishing the economic impacts of tourism in protected areas, and to do so by this video message. I would like to extend our sincere thanks to the organizers, IUCN, Protected Areas Tourism, and Protected Areas Specialist, TAPAS Group, Center for Responsible Travel, CREST or CREST, World Wildlife Fund, WWF, and the Arizona State University, ASU, School of Community Resources and Development. We appreciate the opportunity to participate in this important initiative and thank you for the active role in supporting heritage conservation around the world. UNESCO was pleased to launch the Visitors Count publication at the IUCN World Conservation Congress in September this year, together with the German Federal Agency for Nature Conservation. The guidelines are the culmination of many years of research work by a team of international experts from the IUCN World Commission on Protected Areas, WCPA, and TAPAS Group. We were also fortunate to have the invaluable support of the European Joint Research Center BioPAMA project and the University of Würzburg in Germany and the US National Park Service Social Science Program in developing these guidelines. This publication is a much needed tool to help national stakeholders, protected area managers, and researchers count visitation and measure economic impacts consistently through a standardized approach. Protected areas, including internationally recognized areas such as UNESCO World Heritage Sites, UNESCO Biosphere Reserves, and Ramsar sites, are important elements of national and international conservation policies and actions. They also contribute significantly to the Sustainable Development Goals, specifically Goals 14 and 15. Tourism in protected areas represent one of the economic opportunities that can help achieve the joint objectives of sustainable local livelihoods and biodiversity conservation. In today's societies, an economic perspective of protected areas has grown in importance, and political agendas are increasingly driven by the desire for sustainable long-term growth. Visitors count shows that demonstrating the positive impact of protected areas can lead to greater buy-in and ownership of conservation practices, less poaching and land encroachment, and help offset human-wildlife conflict where it occurs. Once managers understand the number and behavior of visitors they host and the revenues and costs they generate, informed decisions on management plans and tourism strategies can be made. To this end, the guidelines contain methodological guidance across a number of key areas, including consistent visitor counting and surveys, economic analysis, guidance on reporting and communicating results, and protected area tourism management strategies. The COVID-19 pandemic has shown that more than ever, healthy ecosystems and functioning natural systems are key to human well-being. As many protected areas are experiencing increased visitor numbers in recent years, including due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we hope that these guidelines will provide a useful tool for making informed decisions on management planning and sustainable tourism strategies. The guidelines are the newest addition to the tools and projects that UNESCO has available to keep World Heritage properties, to help World Heritage properties develop and manage sustainable tourism. In closing, I would like to thank you all for joining us today and for your interest in Visitors Count. UNESCO looks forward to continuing our work with you to support the conservation of heritage, promoting local sustainable development and enhancing the visitor experience in protected areas. Thank you very much for your attention. I wish you all a very successful symposium. Thank you.
Thank you, Jyoti. We really appreciate it and wish you were here. Next, we have Dr. Manuel Woltering, the Chair of Geography and Regional Science for the University of Würzburg. Welcome, Manuel.
Yes, welcome everybody. I just want to show my, I don't know. Oh, okay, I can't make my video starting now, but I think you can hear me. That's enough, I think. I'd like to welcome everybody. My name is Manuel Woltering, and I work at the University of Würzburg in Germany as part of a research team focusing on economics of tourism in protected areas. And my following explanations about different aspects of visitor counting were collected, as we heard of before, as part of a bigger volunteer project. And as you can see, oh, why is it not working here? And as you can see, hopefully now many people got involved in this to make it a success. In particular, I would like to mention Anna Spensley from the Tapas Group, Barbara Engels from the Federal Agency of Nature Conservation in Germany, and last not least, Jan-Philipp Schaegner from the JRC as part of the Biopharma team, who I would like to say thank you very much for their continuous efforts to bring this forward and make, yes, I think a little success story about it. Okay, I would like to start my presentation with this equation for the estimation of the economic contribution of protected area tourism. And all you need to know is, are the shown three variables: visitor numbers, the average visitor spending, and economic multipliers. And this might look quite easy, but it is tricky in detail, as some of you really good know, I think. Besides information about the spending behavior of visitors and economic multipliers, we see the two right variables, and we hear about this more information later in this session. You need to know how many people visit a protected area. Basically, everything starts with the visitation of protected areas. And the number of visitors is the most important variable, as it is the starting point of all analyses, not only of economic impacts, but also of environmental or socioeconomic side effects. And there's a great variation within this variable across sites, ranging from thousands of visits per hectare and year for some tourism hotspots to almost zero in large remote areas. And even you have this distribution within one protected area. Thus, visitor counting programs need to be designed with caution to obtain accurate visitation figures while efficiently using available resources. So, for planning a visitor counting program, you need to keep in mind 4 essential questions. The first is what to count. And as you can see here, you can differentiate between different things you can count, beginning with entrance, meaning persons who are going to a protected area for any purpose. And this includes also people just driving by, as well as local people passing through a small corner of the park, or daily activities of workers within the protected area. From a tourism point of view, we are interested in visitors. That means persons who visit the protected area just for recreational purposes. And they do visits. And some of you might think, okay, visitor visits, that's the same, but keep in mind that there are some cases in the world where visitors do 2, 3 or more visits within one protected area on one day. And that's why, from an economic perspective, we are interested in visitor days. That means the total number of days that a visitor stays in a protected area, because a visitor can just spend his money once a day and not 2 or 3 times. The second question is how to count. And you see here 3 different ways to do this. The first one is the direct one. And you see here a classical way to do it via paper and pencil, but you can do it also with camera recordings or using observations from the air. The second one is the indirect way. It includes options like counting parking or entrance fees, permits, licenses, as you can see here, entries in guest books, but also signs of use, or in today's times, even social media posts. And the last one is the automatic way. That means counts with mechanical or electronic devices to get an insight in the visitor numbers. Here are just a few examples, like a turnstile or a below ground pedestrian counter here on the left side, or on the right side, a pyro sensor and a wooden stake, as we see here, both the last ones, both at their installing phase. The next question 3, is how to sample. So what does this mean? Ideally, every visitor entering the site in a given year is counted. And then the number of visitors counted represents the total annual visitation of a protected area. This is easy to do if entrance tickets are issued at controlled access points, or if automatic counters are operated all year long at every access point. However, directly counting every visitor entering the site may be costly and inefficient, and so counting may take place at certain locations and times, and then used to estimate the number of visits at other times of the year. And this is called sampling. And to do this sampling, you have to ask yourself where to count. At entrance gates, at visitor centers, at remote places. You have to distribute your counting sites to get most or the best information to get the whole visitation of a protected area. But keep in mind not to double count. That's really not what we want, as the same as I stated before, because we need just the one visitor can just spend his money once and not twice or 3 times. Second, sampling, you have to keep in mind the question of when to count, and then how often and for how long a day. We see here an example of 18 counting days, and these 18 counting days were used to make an estimation of the whole year's visitation in one German protected area. And this process is referred to as an upscaling, aggregation, interpolation, or extrapolation process. And depending on how comprehensive and representative the counting is across time and space, the method of upscaling may have a substantial effect on the accuracy of the overall visitation figure. Here now, the 4 questions again you have to keep in mind for your planning a visitor counting program. And Every way to count has its advantages and disadvantages, and the option selected will depend on policy needs, available financial resources, labor costs, available staff and expertise within the protected area, the characteristics of the site of interest, and the desired sampling strategy. And as a last slide, I just want you to show this decision tree. You can go through and you can read in the publication we give to you and the material of this conference. And there are 4 steps you have to keep in mind. The first one is essentially you have to explore whether there is data available already that can be used to estimate visitation. If this question is answered with no, then you have to do the next steps. Select your counting locations, select your counting periods, where, when, and how often. And last but not least, select the right counting method. You see in the lower third of the decision tree in the red shaped boxes, the 3 ways I explained. And yeah, if you do this, you can or have the opportunity to get good visitation insights, visitor numbers. And yeah, I hope this was a small insight in what we did about visitor counting within our project the last years. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Manuel, for that excellent presentation. Next, we have Catherine Cullinane Thomas, an economist from the U.S. Geological Survey. Welcome, Catherine.
Hi, everyone. So good to be here. I am working on sharing my screen here. Can you all see it?
You're good.
Yes.
Yes, great. Okay. Great. So good to be with everyone here today. My name is Kathy Cullinane Thomas. I'm going to talk today about how we use visitor surveys to estimate visitor spending. So I'd like to start by thanking the visitor counts team, especially Daniel Metzler, who was an author on this chapter with me, and then the U.S. National Park Service social science program, my colleagues Lynn Kuntz and Matt Fleer. So as Manuel mentioned, basically visitor spending is we're going to multiply the number of people who visited a protected area times a spending pattern to estimate the total visitor spending. And to do this, make this a better estimate, we split visitors into visitor segments. So different types of trips will produce different spending patterns. So this is often based on trip type. So did you come and stay in a hotel, or were you camping, or did you just come on a day trip to the local area? I have an example from Yosemite National Park of visitor segments and spending profiles. So on the left, the pie chart is showing how visits to Yosemite National Park split out by trip type. So about 50% of the visits to the park were people that were lodging outside of the park in hotels outside of the park. And about 11% were people that were staying in hotels that were inside of Yosemite National Park. And then there are about 15% of people that were just in the park on a day trip. And then a variety of different ways that people were camping in and out of the park. And on the right, the bar chart is showing visitor spending patterns for those different types of segments. And you can see they really differ by segment. So people that were staying in lodging spent quite a bit more money per day or night than folks that were on day trips. So this is why we segment visitors. The next important thing is that you need to define what is the area that you are estimating visitor spending for. And so this area could be a small area right around the protected area, or it could be a larger area, such as an entire state or region, or even the whole nation, depending on what it is that you're hoping to understand with visitor spending and the story that you want to be able to tell with knowing those numbers. So here again is our example of Yosemite National Park, which is the red dot there in the state of California. And the area that we include as the local area is just the area right around the park that includes the towns and communities where visitors are staying and spending money. So on our surveys, we ask people specifically to give us information about their spending in that specific area. So these are the questions that we ask on visitor spending or on visitor surveys, specifically to get at visitor spending. I want to point out that in the visitor counts document, there are several example visitor surveys where you can go and look at a whole visitor survey and see exactly how these questions were worded. But specific questions we ask are, how much money was spent in that local area? How large is your group? What type of accommodation are you staying in? So that's how we can segment them. Were you local to that area, or are you visiting from outside of that area? Again, that's going to help us segment visitors. How long did you stay in the protected area and in the area around the protected area? And also, what was your importance of choosing the protected area of the protected area in choosing the destination? And that can help us do some scaling of how much of the visitor spending that we measure can actually really be attributed to the existence of the protected area. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about the actual surveys. So we're targeting visitors to the protected area. So we typically do intercept surveys where someone walks up to visitors in the park and asks them, would you be willing to take this survey? And these surveys can be completed in person. So they can do that maybe on a piece of paper or on a tablet right there at the intercept. Or sometimes they're done as mailback surveys where the surveyor will hand the visitors a paper survey and ask them to mail it back after their trip, or some combination of the two. Visitor sampling is an important piece of this. We want to try and get a representative sample of all of the visitors to the park. So choosing where in the park to intercept visitors is one aspect of that. So here again is our Yosemite example, and you can see for the Yosemite sampling design, they were primarily sampling visitors at the major entrances to the park and asking them, would you be willing to take this survey? And then another important piece of getting a representative sample is to think about the timing of your intercept. So seasonality, you're going to have different mixes of visitors coming, in the high summertime versus the lower winter time, the time of day that you're intercepting people, and the day of the week. Is it a weekday or is it a weekend? I want to point out that when you're doing these visitor surveys, there's a lot of other types of questions you can ask on your visitor survey. So you can combine, use a survey to meet multiple needs. So some of the common other things you might be able to ask on a visitor survey would be questions about trip planning and travel, questions about their time actually in the park, what activities did they do, how did they use the park, how satisfied were they with the park and the facilities. You can ask more about the visitor, their demographics, their group characteristics. And you can also ask about the benefits to the visitor, things like the value of the protected area, so their willingness to pay, questions like that, and also health benefits or perceived health benefits. And then you can also ask any other management relevant questions on the survey, such as questions about crowding or transportation, things like that. That's all I have for you today. Again, I'd like to thank everyone. Really glad to be here with you.
Thank you so much, Catherine. Next, we had scheduled Dr. Thiago Beraldo, the International Technical Advisor for the BioTour, Biodiversity and Tourism Project for the UNDP. He is stuck on a plane, so he has sent us a presentation via video. Please roll the video, Maddie.
Everyone, my name is Thiago Beraldo Souza. I am the Economic Coordinator of the Tourism and Protected Areas Specialist Group, TAPAS. And today I will be speaking about economic analysis of visitation. This presentation is based on our new manual guideline, Visitors Count, Guidance for Protected Areas on Economic Analysis of Visitation, that we launched with support of UNESCO, BFN, and other partners. So economic analysis is an equation that we need to use 3 variables. We basically count how many visitors we have in a protected area or in a country, in the protected area system of a country, if you are doing this in the national level. Also, we multiply these numbers for the average spending of each visitor, to know how much money they spend in the economy, the direct effect of the visitors' numbers and average spending in the economy. And then we use economic multipliers to measure the effects of this money circulating in the local economy. This is basically what economic analysis does. My previous colleagues, dear and previous colleagues, presented visitors' numbers and average visitor spending. So I'm going to present now economic multipliers. So the first thing to present is the economic effects, how they work. Let's say we have a family visiting a national park. In one of the days of the visit, they decide to go to the town, to the local town, to go to the restaurant. And then they go to the restaurant, they have their meal, they spend their money in the local restaurant. So the money that came from the visitor goes local now through the restaurant, stays in the restaurant local. This is the direct effect, that the money that comes from the tourists and stays in the local economy. However, the owner of the restaurant also need to buy supplies from local markets to offer the meals for the clients. In this situation, we consider the money that comes from the owner of the restaurant to buy supplies, indirect effects. Also, when the money that goes to the market, and then the market uses to buy new supplies to buy from the local farmers, for example, is also considered in the indirect effects. The money starts to circulate in the economy. One business buy from another business locally, and the circulation of the money is really important because it's not the money that just comes from the tourists, but the multiplication effect that happens in the local economy. Also, we consider the induced effects that are the effects that comes from the money spent from the owner of the restaurant and her, in this case, employees in the local economy. The money that they use to buy food, to put gas on the tank, and so on. So the money that comes from salaries and wages and profits that circulates in the local economy. These are the induced effects. So the total effects that we calculate in those economic analyses are the sum of the direct effects that are ratios that we calculate from total visitors with visitor spending, and also visitor spending with some effects that I will present in the next slide. And then we use the multipliers to calculate indirect effects and induced effects, that when the money circulates in the economy and does this multiplication effect. We have many different ways to present those economic effects, these economic effects, but the most common are direct output and how much are the sales, basically the sales that happens with the money from the tourists spend in the local economy. Income, how much income is generated, how much employment jobs are generated, value added to the local economy or the national economy, the GDP, and also taxes, how much taxes are generated through those economic effects. So to illustrate, I will present a case study where we calculated the economic contribution from 120 national protected areas of Brazil. So this is a national level analysis in 2018. So we have the economic contributions of the protected areas of Brazil. Number of visitors in that year was 12.4 millions. The average spending per visitor was between $10.49 to $60.95 was the average ranged between these two amounts. And the economic multipliers were in the national level were between 2.17 and 4.13 to do the calculations. This is important to state that this is in the national level, so multipliers are higher. Normally, multipliers range between 1 and 2 at local level and also state level. So here we have a normal table that we see in this economic analysis, where we present the direct and total effects of visitor spending at national scale, in this case in Brazil 2018. On the left, we have spending categories, where we use these ones, accommodation, meals, gas and oil, local transportation, activities and guided tours, other expenses, retail sector, and wholesale sector. Because we divide in categories to interview the tourists, the visitors, and also the multipliers are different for different industries when we do this analysis. On the top, we have the effects that represent the results. So we have output in $1 million, jobs generated, personal income, and value added to the Brazilian economy. And on the bottom, we have the results of direct effects, secondary effects that are the indirect and induced effects, and total effects. So just to summarize the impact in Brazilian economy, as output, total effects were about $2.5 billion in sales in Brazil, generating almost 90,000 jobs, just the tourism protected areas in Brazil, in the national protected areas, generating a personal income for owners and employees around $666 million, and a value added to the Brazilian economy of almost $1 billion. These are really important numbers for Brazil, and start to make a difference for stakeholders to understand the importance of the Brazilian economy, the visitation for the Brazilian economy. So the same analysis, with that same analysis, was possible to show that while the protected area agency budget was around $166 million in 2018, and the park protected areas in tri-fee was around $19 million, much less than agency budget, the direct and the total output from visitation was much, and visitor spending was much higher than the agency budget. With this information was possible, protected area management in Brazil could say that for each $1 invested in protected area management was generated $15 for the Brazilian economy. And that information was really important for the protected area agency in Brazil. Thank you very much. I hope you have a brief understanding of what we are talking about economic analysis. In our guideline, you will have much more information in chapter 6 to understand this subject. Thank you very much. And I hope we are having a good presentation.
Thank you, Thiago. We wish you a safe flight. Next, we have Liisa Kajala, the Senior Advisor from methodological. Welcome, Liisa.
Hello. Shall I start?
Yes, please.
All right, just a second. There's a Finnish scenery, and soon you should see my first slide. There it comes. Hi, everybody. I'm Liisa, Kajala, and I work for Metsähallitus Parks and Wildlife Finland, which is a land management agency managing all the state-owned parks and protected areas in Finland. We've been measuring visitor spending effects since year 2010, so for about 10 years now. And I guess this was one of the reasons me and my colleague Joel Erkkonen were invited to contribute to the chapter on reporting and communication in this guidebook. So once the results of economic analysis are available through the steps described in previous excellent presentations, it's essential to report and communicate the results in a clearly understandable way in order to efficiently and effectively reach the target audiences. It's beneficial to harmonize reporting across areas and time when feasible, especially when using a uniform methodology. The chapter of the guidebook on reporting and communication gives ideas and examples on how to do this. Visitor information is important at various levels, from a single protected area to regional and national statistics. It is essential for local protected area managers and for tourism development, as well as for regional, national, and international policy planning, reporting, research, and comparisons. When the economic impacts of protected areas are calculated in a standardized manner, it allows for reporting at all these levels, and moreover, it enables comparisons between areas or regions and across time. On the left here, we have an example of a single visitor survey report from one Finnish national park, and on the right-hand side, you see a graph illustrating the development of local economy impacts of visitors spending at the national level for all Finnish national parks for 8 years from 2010 to year 2018. The contribution estimates can be updated annually, even if visitor survey data are typically not collected from every area every year, as the number of visits is estimated annually. In addition to traditional visitor monitoring reports like printouts and so on, interactive data visualization tools can give users the ability to search for and view specific data. Here's an excellent example of this kind of reporting from the US National Park Service's Visitor Spending Effects webpage, where reports are made available online via an interactive tool. With the help of this tool, users can view year-by-year trend data and explore current year visitor spending, jobs, labor income, value added, and economic output effects by sector, and also for national, state, and local economy levels. Once the reports are ready, it is important to consider the most efficient ways of communicating them to make the case for national conservation. One powerful way of illustrating the importance of visitor spending effects is to compare the economic effects of visitation to protected area budgets, as we saw from Thiago's presentation already. This way, we have been able to illustrate, for instance, in Finland, that public money spent on management and services of national parks and other protected areas comes back manifold to local economies through private businesses and jobs. Finally, for the results to be effective, they should be, of course, communicated to target audiences through appropriate media and communication channels. And if one wants to affect decision-making, timing of the communicating the results is essential. Thank you very much for your attention. Greetings from Finland.
Thank you so much, Liisa. We appreciate your presentation and look forward to a discussion in a few minutes. Lastly, we have John Philip Schaegner, a scientific officer from the Joint Research Center. While Philip wasn't able to join us today, he asked if I could share his thoughts. So I'm going to go ahead. So as we have seen, the visitor count guideline can help the compatibility of visitor counts and economic impact results, and handholds users through an economic analysis process, including how to do visitor surveys and counts. The guideline help protected area managers to understand what visitors spend, the indirect of their spending at local businesses, and the induced effects of that spending in the economy. We have been disseminating the guideline through the IUCN, UNESCO, BFN, and our networks, but recognize that there is also a need to provide training and build capacity among protected area practitioners on how to use it. To supplement this session, we are planning other initiatives too. We are initiating the development of a massive open online course, or MOOC, funded by the EU's BioPAMA program. The MOOC will be a training resource that will help protected area managers to measure their economic impacts over time. PowerPoint presentations with accompanying scripts will be developed. These will explain and illustrate each step of the economic analysis clearly so that a park manager can follow them. In addition, a webinar series will be organized with speakers drawn from among the authors of visitor counts and opportunity for discussion, questions, and clarifications. These webinars will be recorded and will become the core material for the MOOC regarding recordings, which will be shared online and accessible to people wanting to take the course. And an exam will be developed that people can take to test their learning. So the MOOC on visitors counts and value chain analysis will complement existing MOOC modules based on the TAPAS Group best practice guidelines for tourism and visitor management in protected areas. This MOOC has already been done for free by more than 2,000 people from IUCN's PAPA Co platform. Also, the TAPAS Group has put together a proposal to organize 2 events at the African Protected Areas Conference in 2022, a technical workshop and also a panel session. We want to use these to share materials and build capacity among protected area managers, economists, practitioners, and monitoring and evaluation staff in how to use the tool. If you'd like to find out more about these initiatives and get involved, you can find out more about the TAPAS Group through these links or contact myself, Kelly Bricker, for more information. Thank you for your kind attention on behalf of Philip.
Excellent. Thank you. And I appreciate that very much. We have a number of questions that have come in the Q&A. I wanted to start with the first one, Kelly, and kind of bring it back to you since you just finished up. And I think Maddie and Alex will be bringing all of our other speakers. Here we go. The first question was, who's taking care of the MOOC, if I pronounced that correctly? Who manages that?
I believe it's a consortium of folks, but go ahead, Liisa. Did you have?
Yeah, I don't know whether, Liisa, you want to handle that? And then I have some other questions for our panels.
MOOC, should I know?
Yeah, I can't answer that myself. So.
Greg, I can say that will be available through our network, the TAPAS Group. I don't know who exactly is managing that, but Philip is certainly involved and a number of people on this.
Okay,
panel.
terrific. Yeah,
Yeah,
Well-
I'm sorry. Even though I'm in Europe, I don't know.
no worries. Yeah, I'm not able to answer that. Let me tee up a first question for Manuel that came in. What about qualitative statistics about the visitor's experience? The question is, I believe this would be very useful as the existing quantitative ones are as well. And Manuel, if you would take that first, and then of course I'll open that up to Catherine and Liisa as well. You know, we all deal with both quantitative and qualitative. And so that the question is qualitative statistics, how important and what key ones related to visitors' experience.
Yes, we have to keep in mind the qualitative statistics as well, but I think to make always say it, conclusions about a whole protected area and the economic impact of tourism of a protected area, you need to keep in mind the quantitative dimension, because you want to say something about the whole visitor range coming to a protected area, and this to do just with qualitative and some interviews is not really possible, I think. So yeah, we keep it in mind, and perhaps to make some special analysis, you can use qualitative statistics, but to make an overall conclusion for the whole protected area, I think it's not possible to do it with just qualitative way.
Mm-hmm. Catherine, Liisa, anything you'd like to add to that?
I would add that, as I mentioned, with the visitor surveys, you know, they really can be used to gather, you know, lots of different information as long as you don't make them too long. So there are, I know on the National Park Service surveys, there are some open-ended questions which can, you know, be asked and qualitatively analyzed. So that's certainly a possibility with the visitor surveying to get qualitative information.
Yeah, and I could just
Sure.
add to that a little bit, because I am in a land management agency, and we do both surveys and we gather more qualitative understanding of our visitor experiences as well. And in fact, a very timely question, because we are finding out that we would need for service design purposes even more so qualitative understanding of specific cases, but there are sort of two sides of providing understanding about our visitors and their experiences. So we need systematic visitor monitoring and this kind of, for instance, economic calculations done in a standard manner with a representative sample and with counting combined to be able to follow the trends, where are we going, and to be able to compare areas and regions between each other. But then qualitative has totally other type of uses in our agency.
Absolutely. Question for Catherine. Catherine, in a park like Yosemite, what percentage of the economy in gateway communities is actually linked to the park?
I can't answer for Yosemite offhand. I will say that, you know, in the U.S. National Park System, there's really a wide variety of parks, and you know how close they are to you know, city centers or really in rural environments is going to affect very much how much the local area around the park is boosted by the park and the portion it accounts for. So it's really variable from park to park. And certainly in some areas, the presence of the park is a very important and big piece of the surrounding local economy.
Okay, great. Question for all panelists, and you can let me know who would like to address this first. Could you please elaborate on how you take into consideration leakages, visitor spending that goes directly to import to serve the visitor, for example, non-local food or non-local owners, rather than staying in the community? I don't know who would like to address that first. It's open for anyone.
I can speak to that. So
Catherine, go ahead.
First of all, so the surveys asked specifically just for local area spending. So we're starting only with spending that in the local area. And then in the United States, the economic model that we use has information on retail margins and also on trade flow information so we're using average trade flow information for the region to estimate the portion of local area spending that is retained within that local area and the portion that is leaked out through imports. So it's part of the economic data that we use.
Terrific. Manuel or Liisa, would you like to expand on that from your perspectives regarding considering leakage? And
I might mention that, yes, we are using a similar kind of model adopted originally from the US National Park Service methodology. So we are doing our best with leakages with Finnish data. We don't have the in-plan model or what do you have in the United States these days. So we have a little bit less detailed data, but we still can take into account leakages certainly with the same methodology as Kathy just described.
okay, so there is consistency in the methodology. Do you all feel that it's being adequately addressed with enough robustness that we capture that
Yeah, I think so.
in general? Okay. Yeah. Okay, wonderful. I want to also point out to all participants that there's some interesting and I think very valuable references to some additional information related to qualitative measures. So please go in there. A general question for everyone, and let me go to you first, Manuel. Why is long-term monitoring useful for a protected area? It's a wide open question, but
yes, I think it's useful for a protected area to do this on a long haul because, to see changes in the visitation figures and the use of a protected area is one aspect, and the second is to make change or to see the changes within the economic impact of the protected area, because structures can change from day trippers to overnight staying guests, and that has also its effects on the surrounding communities participating or profiting from the protected area tourism. And so I think, to have this in mind, you need to do such analysis from, I think, every 5 or 10 years on to do or to see these changes in visitation habits.
One question I'll ask all of you, and maybe Catherine and Liisa, you can address this. Given the very clear and present danger we're faced with the impacts of climate change, when we look at the kind of monitoring and evaluation that we're trying to do to see economic patterns, et cetera, we're all experiencing significant shifts moving forward in visitor patterns, extended shoulder seasons in protected areas and gateway communities and projecting out. What have you each done in terms of kind of thinking about this, of how you're maybe modifying methodologies to capture information about visitor trends and spending when things are going to be changing? Ski resorts are not going to have in protected areas, whether it's forests or parks, et cetera, are not necessarily going to have as many days. So what are they going to be doing? Are these shoulder seasons extending, and what are patterns? Catherine, I sense that you probably have some thoughts on that first, and then we'll go to Liisa and Manuel.
This is a question we've been getting asked for sure. And, with regard to the economic impact analysis, we don't have specific methodology at this point, though, as we described, there's the components, the visitor counting, the visitor spending patterns that are combined to estimate visitor spending. And, in the US National Park Service, they are launching a systematic socioeconomic monitoring survey effort that will be will be surveying parks, a set of parks each year. And in some cases, there will be parks that are surveyed in different seasons. So we've been modifying our visitor spending effects model to be able to use different spending pattern data for different seasons. It's common that we have that detailed information. That is one way that we are able to approach that. And, the park system monitors visitation on a monthly basis and has for a long time. Okay. That is an excellent source of data to be able to look and see how visitation is shifting throughout the year. Their counting data has the trends that can show that over time. So
we have about 1 more minute. Liisa, I'm curious from the Finland perspective. Obviously, climate change is going to have significant impacts on your visitation up there. Any thoughts on this in terms of how you're maybe adapting to that in terms of monitoring?
In terms of monitoring, we have continuous electronic counters, so we can all the time see what's happening, what has happened. The forecasting is then another thing. And I think that's one value of continuous monitoring with similar methodology. We have the long trends, which allow also for doing some forecasting.
Okay, terrific. We're going to need to transition. I want to thank our speakers, Manuel, Catherine, and Liisa, and of course, Kelly, for facilitating. And unfortunately,